As the testers went off to do their thing, I had gotten the attention of John Devon, who at that time, he'd been an assistant to Bill and was the head of the engineering excellence team at this point. And he was curious about what I'd gotten the devs to go through and what their commitment was and what I was starting to see being delivered. And so he went through the same training with the test team and sat through for 3 weeks, all day, every day, to understand what was going on. Okay. I asked John to let me run this as a system and to give me air cover to make sure that everybody else understood what we were doing for a number of iterations. And back then, it wasn't agile per se. It took us, we would plan for, several months, and then we would replan when things didn't look like they were going to make it frequently. But I asked John, do you want to see the telemetry? Because I've instrumented the team. And he said, absolutely. So I would send him data about what the team was doing. And at one point, I got an email from John saying, the team is learning. Why do you think that is? And so, well, John, I want you to look at the code review process and that I've got 3 devs handing these dev that's having their code reviewed, whose only requirement is to actually accept them with grace and then decide what they're going to do about those gifts. And John said, yeah, that's really cool, but do you think you could do it with 2 devs instead of 3? So he was looking at efficiency, right? And I said, I don't really know. That's their call. I will ask them. And so I sat down with the dev team, said, so what's the defect density impact of pulling one of you off? And so they went through all of their math to try and understand how they were calibrated and what would likely happen. And they came back and they said that they were going to see a slightly higher defect density, but it was still going to be acceptable compared to typical delivery. And so the dev team told the test team, hey, we're going to deliver more bugs to you, so your workload's going to get a little bit more interesting for you, but it's still going to be this percentage of the total, and good luck finding them. So long story now shortened. We delivered a lot of goodness. The company adopted what we did, and we took localization builds from being somewhere around 3 weeks to get a localization build because all of the compiled code was shipped out by hard media and courier, secure courier to a translation house like in Germany or France or wherever. And then the translatable resources stripped out, translated, recompiled, the whole thing sent back. From that, we got, when we were done and had everything running in Windows main and Office main and Visual Studio and all the different places with our build tools that were integrated instead of this separate thing that had been the case before, we were building 100 languages in 20 minutes. Okay. And so at that point, John gave us an engineering excellence award and got to stand on a stage with Bill and get a crystal and all that fun stuff with John, where he recognized it. And I asked John, so through everything that you've learned by watching us, and I'm looking at Longhorn, still Longhorns, and it's now half as long because we've cut it in half and called it Vista. Said, are you going to work with Watts? I mean, is there something here that's interesting? And his comment was, you know what? We're not going to pay somebody else for a software process. We're Microsoft. And so he pulled funding out of his back pocket and he started building our tool set that, has evolved over time. But if you remember early, our tool set that allowed us to do the kinds of things that I've been talking about and where DevOps is today, that's where it came from. Just wow. Remarkable how this little butterfly of a team and the conversations I was allowed to have with a very senior, very smart man, and then the kind of things he said. Now, Grant, I can't say that we had the singular source of impact on that. He did tell me at one time that he'd considered parachuting us into another team, Windows Update team at that time, because we had a pretty strong grip on process and they needed to figure out what was going on for them. But he decided it would be better if they figured it out themselves rather than parachute us in, which was great because I think it would have damaged both teams by saying that we knew something they didn't and all of that, So there's a bit of that Microsoft history that was kind of fun, a genesis of something. When Watts got his National Medal of Technology by the elder Bush, actually, I wrote him an email congratulating him and thanking him for how he helped us. He said, actually, it was the work that your team did and your company did that helped me get here. So that was kind of a cool statement too. He was a very generous man. So
that's a great story.
Yeah.
That's a great story. Gosh. How did you know about this software development process was pre-Scrum? Did you learn it just from your affiliation with Watts, or did you pick it up in your hardware days, or
Good
how did this come
question.
about?
Yeah. So if we go back to the hardware days, one of my major customers was Xerox Corporation. And as we both know, Xerox invented the personal computer and didn't know it because their business was selling toner, not delivering PCs. But they also had disk drives, rotating memories in their very large Docutech computer center, copy centers. And so there was a lot of rotating memories in their world. I had supported Xerox because they reached out to me and asked, said, can you help us be a repair depot for our Xerox AmeriCare team? They did third-party service of K-Pros and, Compacts and all sorts of the early computers, thinking that with all their external engineers, they could go out and do that business. I don't want to do this. Okay, yeah, we'll do it. So we did that. And in the process of that, they said, well, we have this other team that's building, it was basically the 80, 85 base star computers, 8010s, running Viewpoint and, the stuff that Steve Jobs saw, right? And invented Apple's Mac. And we've got these machines that we're getting these soft error rates out of these 40 megabyte quantum hard drives. And Quantum told us to pound sand. Would you be willing to take a look? And at that point, I had seen so many different companies' failure rates on rotating memories that I had a pretty strong opinion about what it meant to build things correctly. Said, yeah, okay, I'll see what I can do. Send me some stuff and I'll take a look. Okay. We went through that process. We did a lot of work, but at the same time, then I think in 81, a CEO was named for Xerox, David Kearns. And David inherited this monster company that had like 14,000 fully electronic engineers, okay, out in the field trying to keep their machines running. It's a hyper expensive, high overhead to sell toner, right? And then, by golly, Canon and Konica and Sharp and all these guys showed up with inexpensive copiers that just ran. And David went, oh my, we're in a tailspin. If we don't pull up, we're done. Okay. And the guys that I was talking to, most of them were based, some of them were based down south in California, but most of them were out of Rochester, out of home. And they came to me and said, so Kearns has told us that we're all going to go through this thing that he's met with a guy named Edward Deming, and we're going to do something called total quality management. And here's the deal. All of our vendors are also going to do total quality management. And I said, oh, that's interesting. What is that exactly? And they said, well, what it means is that you and one of your engineers need to come to Rochester and live with us for a period of time. And we're going to pay for everything for your company to become fully capable in a total quality management, statistical process control environment and everything that entails. And if you don't want to do it, it's fine. It's voluntary. But if you don't do it, you're not going to vend to us anymore. So it's like, okay, well, I kind of like the money and the business, and you guys pay your bills on time, and, let's do that. So that was the entry point into quality management, into process control, into telemetry, statistical process control, understanding that, if you have a fire hose of data, you can't learn anything, but if you pick a few things, which kind of goes back to that 4-star points of consideration, but it's amazing how a few good pieces of telemetry can tell a really big story. and with clarity. And looking at all of that, coming through and developing playbooks for each workstation, where when a hard drive runs from parts coming into one end and finished product going out the other, how to not inject defects along the path, and how you would measure to make sure that who's sending you a part is sending you something with the same quality they received it, being able to reject it, stop the line. If you see something that you think is not right, send it back rather than allow it to fail at the end of the line. And if you think about what I just said, and then you think about what I told you about the localization studio experience, it's the same. It's exactly the same thing. And so it's about process control. It's about telemetry. It's about catching defects in specs, because those are the cheapest defects you can find, right? It's about catching defects in ENUS rather than exploded out into 100 languages. Okay. And so forth. So it really went back to that experience. In 1989, Xerox Corporation got the Malcolm Baldrige Award for quality. Okay. Big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. In 1989, they gave me Vendor of the Year for being 100% on time with zero defects.
That really puts it in perspective then. That makes sense. I mean, they're getting this award for quality control and you're the vendor that's delivering 100%. I mean, that all definitely lines up to how you had such a good understanding. You clearly had a solid grasp on the aspect of quality control and the things needed to then implement that from a software perspective. That makes perfect sense. And I think you had more to say there.
Yeah. So that's where that all came from.
That's really cool.
Watts, I didn't know Watts. That came from another fellow in the engineering excellence team that was looking at quality process, and another gentleman in the engineering excellence team who was looking at international stuff, who was allied with me to solve my team's problems, recommended we talk. And that's what surfaced the idea that if I brought Watts in, we could maybe do some magic. So, it took a number of us to see that there was a way forward that might make a lot of sense.
This is a little bit of a pivot, but I'm thinking about what you described, and I fully agree with you, by the way, about the importance of having quality data points and how you can have a few data points that are the right ones, and you can get sometimes have the most relevant information in that. And I'm contrasting that in my mind with the art that I've seen, that I've looked at from you, which is every single data point in that art appears to matter.